City-run grocery stores are supposed to make food more affordable, but Chicago's experiment is hitting a roadblock after spending $13.5 million.
So as the trend of free stuff accelerates in these communist sanctuary cities, Chicago's learning it just doesn't work. And what's shocking about this is the clowns running this circus told everyone other people's money was gonna keep these free-to-operate supermarkets open forever. But because of high crime, high costs, and dwindling sales, they failed. And although this should have been a warning to communists across America, as you're about to see, they aren't listening.
7 Save-A-Lot locations on the south and west side of Chicago could be closing. These stores have continued to face significant challenges, including dramatic cuts to SNAP benefits. As a result of this and other financial headwinds, Save-A-Lot made the difficult decision to end our arrangement.
Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to look at the fact that this hasn't worked anywhere. You know, the only time that a government-run grocery store has worked historically is a commissary on a military base.
The city gave $13.5 million to help refurbish 6 of the 7 stores, which are supposed to stay open through 2035.
I'm going to continue to do my part to make these necessary investments. The hope is that, our corporate leaders can come together to find a way.
Literally the definition of insanity, it's all about narrative. So we need to feed this narrative that these greedy corporations, because it can't possibly be my fault for spending too much money as a government official. Right. It's these greedy corporations trying to keep the lights on.
So there was an entire country at one point that tried this whole government-run stores thing, and it didn't work. But we're not teaching people about that in America anymore. But the communists in America, they think that for some reason, this isn't gonna happen again under their watch, but as you're about to see, it already is. And Chicago's $13.5 million failure with their city-run stores pales in comparison to the $70 million circus Zoran Mamdani is bringing to New York City right now, a proposal experts say will drain the local economy and eliminate businesses and jobs because local grocers can't compete with 30% lower prices at the city-run stores, while their wealth and their customers' wealth gets stolen to fund these places. And the dumbest thing about these free-to-operate stores and the debate surrounding them is nobody wants to answer the question why there's no grocery store there already. If there's so much demand for a grocery store and if we need one so bad, why isn't there one? Well, the answer to this is obvious. You see, New York City's first government grocery store is gonna be opened in a neighborhood that used to have a Target, which was looted out of existence just 3 years ago and never came back, exposing the real problem. And that's the problem of profit. If a place is unprofitable, it means the value being expended to keep its doors open eclipses the value it provides to its neighborhood, and closing is the only logical move. Otherwise, the place just wastes money. Which brings us to the real reason these government-run grocery stores just imploded in Chicago and why it's about to happen again in New York City. Nobody wants to admit that these places just aren't worth keeping open in the first place. But the problem is the communists that want them open are guided by a belief that things should always exist as a matter of fairness, and that if there isn't a grocery store somewhere, a grave injustice has been perpetrated against the members of wherever that place is, even if there was a store there before which had to shut down. But before we get into the spectacular and predictable implosion of these Chicago stores, there's another issue everyone's missing that you have to understand, and it has to do with prices, which are the whole reason the communists say we need these stores. They say that prices are too high, but what they fail to understand is that prices have a purpose. If something's expensive, that's a signal to businesses to start selling that thing too, and once they do, the price goes down, something we saw with eggs. Prices went way up, producers saw them and rushed to get in on the action, and once supply grew so fast it outpaced demand, prices tanked. Companies that accelerated their production first got rewarded for it. The companies that came in too late got punished for being too late to the game. That's how capitalism works. And once you understand that prices are temporary and that communist-induced poverty is permanent, what happened in Chicago should serve as a warning to our entire country.
It's going to make an impact to the community, a real big impact.
7 Save-A-Lot locations on the south and west side of Chicago could be closing.
Uh-oh.
The grocery store chain terminated its operating agreement with Yellow Banana, the Ohio-based company that has managed the stores since 2023. Save-A-Lot sent us a statement that says, in part, these stores have continued to face significant challenges, including dramatic cuts to SNAP benefits. Compared to last year, the stores have experienced a 26% decline in...
So, here's the problem. In 2022, this company was given $13.5 million by the government to open a whole bunch of stores and run them. And then on top of that, they raised another $13 million. So they had a $26 million budget to run some stores. And they were supposed to stay open for 10 years, but here we are 4 years later and they're all shutting down. And while the people defending this will say, oh, it's Trump's fault the stores imploded. That's right, he cut people's benefits. So the government giving money to these stores to stay open wasn't enough. We also had to pay people to shop at them, and that still didn't keep them open. And the fact that people are still paid to shop at these places, and they were given all this money to stay open, and they completely collapsed, that should scare everyone, because we're gonna try this again in New York City, and instead of $13 million, we're gonna spend $70 million, and we expect it to be better somehow.
And this is just one example, at least here in New York City or Chicago, where we are trending towards we need the government to save us, and now we need the government to feed us.
But
how do you think about this?
Governments
Well,
can't
you don't
feed
have to be
people.
a rocket scientist to look at the fact that this hasn't worked anywhere.
Right.
You know, we have the only time that a government-run grocery store has worked historically is a commissary on a military base. That is literally the only time in history that it's worked for over a 2-year period. They tried it in Detroit. They obviously tried it in Chicago. You know, there's a gent here trying to do it. And the problem is the margins don't support it. It's like, why would you go after the 1 to 6% margin business? It's extremely tightly run.
Right.
And one of the smartest men in the world, you know, who ran this in the beginning, Sam Walton, had a heck of a time trying to get prices this low.
Right, that's the whole thing about this that's so ridiculous. Grocery stores already make no money, and if the prices at those stores are too expensive, that serves a purpose which will correct itself, but the communists, they want to shortcut that process. They see a high price and they say, oh, a high price, eggs are too expensive, capitalism's failed, tear the whole thing down. Forget the fact that the United States has been existing on capitalism for hundreds of years and we're the greatest country in the world and we feed the most people in the entire world. I mean, no, forget all that, tear it all down. Prices were too high last year, up, it's over. And so then they want to come in with their government-run stores. They use a temporary inconvenience, which will correct itself, as an excuse to burn the whole house down. And that's what they're doing in the 2026 midterm election cycle. They're saying our system is over. They're saying our country's rigged. And absolutely none of this is about helping people. If you wanted to help people, you'd take the $70 million that you're gonna blow on these stores, which aren't gonna stay open, and you would just buy groceries for people from Costco or Walmart and have people go there and pick up their free groceries. You wouldn't open a store that's gonna implode, but that's not what this is about. What the communists want is they want to use a temporary problem, which fixes itself as part of a normal business cycle, to come in with their system, set it up as fast as they can, and have pictures of all these happy people that came out of the government-run grocery store with a bag full of stuff that somebody else paid for, bragging about how, oh, this is great, we need this everywhere, we should just steal from everyone so we can have all kinds of cheaper free stuff. But here's the problem the communists miss, which is why their plans always collapse. Look at this. In this article entitled "The Problem with Government-Run Grocery Stores," which is very short, we get our answer. To make a profit and stay open, businesses must do two things: maximize revenue and minimize costs. In order to minimize costs, the business must cut back on the number of scarce resources used, which frees up those resources to be used elsewhere in the economy. Profit represents the value a business creates for customers. If the business loses money, the resources being used to keep it open are worth more than the value being created by that business. In other words, the business is destroying the value of resources. But it gets even worse when you look at what a government-run store that can get unlimited money from its citizenry by stealing from them, of course, until they go bankrupt, runs into when they get into business. Look at this. Profit is a means to evaluate decisions. For example, should a grocery store buy a new software system for more efficient managing of inventory and deliveries? Or should it invest in a physical warehouse? Without a profit and loss calculation, There is no way to make that decision. If the store doesn't have books and isn't turning a profit, they can't make any decision that will keep the place open and make it run efficiently. It's literally impossible. But of course, that made no sense to the mayor of Chicago, who wanted to try it anyways. Watch this.
Tells us for ribbon cuttings and grand reopenings after the city gave Yellow Banana $13.5 million to help refurbish 6 of the 7 stores.
Look at how they looked
which
at
are
first.
supposed to stay open through 2035. If they close, they must reopen as grocery stores within a year. The city's also looking at ways to recoup taxpayer funding if necessary.
I'm going to continue to do my part to make these necessary investments. The hope is that, our corporate leaders can come together to find a way. Again, the federal cuts have had profound impact.
Oh, so it's Trump's fault, and it's the fault of the corporate leaders who have to abide by profit. And if they don't make profit, they have to make the decision to close the store. And here's what I want you to see. When these places opened, they were full. And this is what the communists are hoping for in New York. They're thinking that, okay, Chicago, this thing didn't work out, $13 million. We're going to get $70 million. We're going to go even harder in New York, which means our stores are going to stay open a little bit longer. And the optics of empty shelves in the Soviet Union or in Cuba, that's not going to happen because we're going to steal so much money up front that it takes a long time for people to figure out that these places aren't working. Never mind the fact that criminals are going to be robbing these places. Never mind the fact the business is incapable of making decisions that will actually allow it to keep open. Zero part of this is sustainable. And that's so crazy because this left social green conglomerate we got over here that now wants to bring us all communism. This is the party of sustainability, right? There is nothing sustainable about a grocery store that just needs unlimited money to exist and can't make any decisions. Zero of that is sustainable. That's why these things collapse. Look at this.
Involvement in everything that we do. Boom, so I want the government to come in and save me. Well, you got to ask yourself, you're treating the symptom, not the cause. So the cause is the government spending too much money, they have too much regulation, too much involvement in everything that we do. And that's why grocery prices are too high, along with destroying the value of our currency. So doing this, you're literally asking the arsonist to put out the fire, right? And it doesn't matter in the liberal world sphere, communist, Democrat, socialist, whatever, if it's never worked, even though trying the same thing over and over again and thinking you're going to get a different result is literally the definition of insanity. It's all about narrative. So we need to feed this narrative that it's these greedy corporations, because it can't possibly be my fault for spending too much money as a government official. It's these greedy corporations trying to keep the lights on.
Who got into a business where the margins are 1% to 3%. Literally operating a grocery store is the opposite of greed. The margins are so small. You're selling celery. You're selling tomatoes. You're selling oranges. What's the markup on an orange? It's so low that you have to sell these things in volume. You literally have to have a business that is as profit efficient as humanly possible. They're not some business that's out there scamming their customers and they have so much money floating around that they can afford to be lousy at what they do because their markup is so high. No, it's not like you're going to the local attorney's office or accountant's office who has a skill that's in demand and they can charge a lot of money for, and you don't really know how much work they're doing, so they can be out on the golf course while they're charging you $300 an hour to answer some question that takes 30 seconds. I mean, it's not like that. Grocery stores can't get away with that. People go in, they buy something, they leave, and if your grocery store is too expensive, they're going to go to one of the other grocery stores nearby, unless you live in a place that doesn't want these things to exist, which is what you might assume is the viewpoint of communists in places like New York and Chicago. I mean, we're letting criminals rob these stores. We're telling these stores they got to pay minimum wages that are so high they have to have automated checkouts for everything. We've got the worst energy policies ever. We shut down all our nuclear power plants and now their utility rates are through the roof, so they have to charge insane prices for their groceries. All of these problems, the high prices, the high crime, the things that are shutting them down and causing them to mark everything up to just stay open in the first place, those policies, the communists are using that as an excuse to come in and undercut all of their own mayhem by stealing from everyone. This is a disaster. Watch.
Can I make a quick point here? and I've had to work on this story and talk to grocers about this who are livid, by the way. But there are a couple of ways that the mayor here could bring down grocery store prices.
They're talking about New York.
Let's remove congestion prices, because everybody who brings in a truck full of grocery goods.
No, that would be cutting taxes.
Has to pay congestion prices, and it's not cheap.
Yeah.
Number two, there's a 4% tax on the rent that these grocers pay every month to their landlords. Why? You know, like, that's just money in the pockets of the city.
Yep.
So the problem here is the government has been stealing from private businesses in places like New York and Chicago for so long that these businesses can't even exist. And now in New York, you got the traffic taxes on top of it. So if you have a grocery store, you're paying 4% for no reason in your 3% business, where that's the most you're gonna make on the stuff on the shelves. And then on top of that, every time a truck full of vegetables shows up, that truck pays extra money just to come to your store, just because it's in New York City, just because you wanna have bike lanes and green spaces all over the place instead of affordable food. I mean, this is just stupid. But that's the reason the communists wanna come in and fix everything. They claim, oh, the prices are too high, even though it's all our fault. So we need to come in and steal from everyone and punish everyone for having the high prices we made them have, just to undercut them temporarily while the whole thing collapses. And here's another issue that nobody's talking about. Look at this. Here's a graph of egg prices in the United States. Look at this. Now, currently, we're low. Graph is low for eggs by the dozen. But when did the prices go up? Look at this, 2022, they started going through the roof. Oh, and then they went back down a little bit, but then, they went way back up. This is when they were like so expensive that people were sounding the alarm. How did this happen? Well, these graphs follow the fact that we had a wide open border in this country. That's another issue that you've got here, because supply has to deal with demand in order to figure out what its price is. And if you have an estimated 20 million people coming into the country and people need to buy things, and you have places like California and New York that are giving people prepaid debit cards for groceries, and the grocery stores end up having way more demand than they thought, they're gonna have to raise prices to keep food on the shelves. Again, that's temporary. Producers saw these high prices and then the price tanked. But this is what the communists do. They see a spike like this and they say, that's our moment. Imagine if this was the graph, right? Here you are in 2025, early 2025. You see this graph of prices. You could point to this chart and you could say, see, capitalism's failed. See, this is why we need socialism. See, this is why you need to have a city-run grocery store. But a couple of months later, it's way back down. Here we are today and it's even lower. These people don't understand the fundamentals of how businesses stay open, why they stay open, why they need to shut down, and why their plans never work. The profit is the thing that keeps these businesses open. A high price tells everyone, hey, there's a business opportunity here. And what happens? People want to get in on that business opportunity. They want to start bringing whatever that thing is that has a high price to market. The people who are smart and get in first, they get rewarded. The people who try to get in on that now are gonna get punished for it. If you wanna get into the egg business now when prices are very, very low, you're gonna get punished. That's not a good business opportunity. You should take your resources and get into another business somewhere else that better suits the economy and better suits the needs of all Americans. And then the other part of this no communist wants to look at is, why do you only have these tiny little grocery stores called bodegas in places like New York City? Well, it's very simple. The value that it takes to open one of these stores and start running it is lower than what the store can make in profits, so they exist. The value that it would take to get a Costco in the middle of New York City would be so expensive that it would take hundreds of millions of dollars to buy up all of the real estate, tear it all down, and then build a new building that becomes a grocery store for everybody. That amount of money is so great, no company will undertake something like this. So that's why you don't have a Walmart sitting on Fifth Avenue. Plus, every time Walmart wants to work with the local government to get a store up and running that would actually help people save money on things, the government says no. If you want to punish capitalists, just let them be capitalists. Let the ones who are smart get in when it's time and actually help people. Let the ones who are dumb and greedy and saw high eggs 6 months ago and are not bright enough to figure out that that ship has sailed, let them get into the egg business today and go out of business, right? Like, let's just let the market be the market and let it sort out its own winners and losers. But no, in communism, everybody loses, just like they're losing in Chicago with all their grocery stores shutting down. 7 stores shutting down, can't stay open. New York's gonna go and do the same thing. What are we doing here? Let me know. I'll see you in the next video.